What's going on, guys? Bengal again here, coming back at you with another video. This one is another mock draft. This one is with trades after free agency. We're taking into account some of the guys at time, but also we realize with the length of some of the deals offered, like a team getting a 1 year, even a 2 year fix would not discourage them from drafting a player at that position if it could be a need in the near future. We're going to talk a lot about the Falcons. We're going to talk about a lot of these different things, but free agency has been factored in. I know a lot of teams didn't really even do a lot in free agency, and some teams are looking a lot better, but this is going to have some crazy things happening. We're going to have some crazy drops. We're going to have some crazy risers, and I guess we're going to try and mimic how crazy the draft could be in real life. It always is. So I guess without further ado, hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Helps me out a ton as we push towards 300K. And we're going to start off with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it's pretty much a given, I think. I don't think there's any other player that's even going to be considered at this point. Honestly, it's Trevor Lawrence all the way. And here's where we get to the first interesting one, because the Jets have done really, really well in free agency to bring in a lot of big-time players. Their roster is still extremely flawed, but they've done well. I think a fun scenario for the Jets, if they ended up sticking with Sam Darnold, is trading down, drafting a cornerback around the top 10, because corner is a super bad position for that team, and then they can see if Sam Darnold's their guy and put more talent around him. However, I think more likely Zach Wilson's going to go to the Jets. He's my quarterback 2 in the class. And I'm trying not to follow what I would do in this. I'm trying to follow what I think the team actually will do and how most teams from reports value these players and other media versus just me. But I think consensus seems to be that Zach Wilson might be quarterback 2 in the class. And we have the Dolphins at the 3rd pick. And this, for me, is going to be a trade. I don't think there's anyone worth taking at this spot if you're the Dolphins. And I think teams are going to be wanting to move up for a quarterback, whether that's the Panthers, Broncos, Niners, Patriots, Washington football team, Chicago Bears. A lot of teams are going to be wanting to move up for a quarterback. And if we're the Dolphins, we are absolutely entertaining those phone calls. And we are probably moving down and acquiring a lot more picks in the process. We'll also say that because I'm doing this on the Draft Network, I have to work within the construct of the trade system. So the trade may not be extremely realistic for what could happen in real life, but I have to make it accepted on the actual trade simulator. We're going to have the Panthers trade up to number 3 for a QB. It's a really strong quarterback class, and the Panthers are a team that really could use a QB. So we're going to have the Dolphins trade number 3. Of course, they're going to swap with the Panthers with number 8. I think it would also cost a 2022 first-round pick for the Panthers to move up, and then maybe a mid-round pick as well. Maybe not even mid-round, but maybe a 2. In there as well. Could be a future 2. Could even be another future 2 or future 3. But for the sake of this trade, we're just going to do a 1, a 2, and a 1 next year to move up to number 3. And that will be accepted. And now the Panthers are picking at number 3 in the draft. Again, I think it's going to take more than that to trade up. But I think if you're a team like the Panthers that might be a quarterback away, plus another few players. And I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team, but I mean, quarterback is certainly a weak point of that team, and they need it to be upgraded very badly over Teddy Bridgewater. But I think they might consider a player like Trey Lance or Justin Fields at this spot. For the sake of this, I am going with Justin Fields at 3. I do think there's a good chance that Trey Lance gets drafted ahead of Justin Fields, but Fields is a really good prospect, and we have 3 quarterbacks in a row. And the Falcons, as you may know, restructured Matt Ryan's contract. And as soon as I saw the new details of the contract, I go, what, man, the Falcons definitely aren't taking a quarterback anymore. But if you see the post-June 1st designation, they can cut Matt Ryan in 2022, and they can save $20 million. There is dead cap associated with that. It's going to be about $20 million as well, but they still free up the $20 million. So they pretty much cancel out Matt Ryan's entire massive contract, and they can still get their quarterback of the future in this draft. So I am going Trey Lance at 4. I think the value is there. Quarterback's the most important position. I think these top 4 quarterbacks are all really, really good, of course, including Trey Lance. If you didn't see my QB video where I ranked the top 10 QBs in the class, Trey Lance is my QB 3. It's so tight with Justin Fields, though. It's really fairly tight with the 4 of these guys. They're all very, very good. And the Falcons taking Trey Lance at 4, I think, is exceptional value because Trey Lance in a lot of other classes would be QB1. This is a really, really good pickup for the Falcons, who, yeah, they can still compete now with Matt Ryan, but based on the way Matt Ryan's new contract is structured, they can save a ton of money by cutting him in 2022 and rock with their new QB of the future. It's a new GM there, new head coach there. They might want their new QB and not rock with Matt Ryan, who's like 37, 38 years old. I think it makes sense to draft a quarterback. As we get to the Bengals at number 5, this one was an interesting one for me because, I mean, Penei Sewell is available at offensive tackle, and of course it's a big need for the Bengals. However, I am going with maybe the best weapon for Joe Burrow, which is a big-time jump ball receiver that can honestly just bail Joe Burrow out. He really was not accurate with the deep ball at all last year, but if you can get a guy that he's comfortable throwing the ball up to, and I know Jamar Chase makes sense, but I like their wideouts, and I like the addition of Kyle Pitts to this team. Yes, versatile weapon. Let me see it in the comments section below. Kyle Pitts is a really, really good player, and he can do a bunch of different things for that offense, including starting right away at tight end over Drew Sample. This is a big-time weapon. They already have Tyler Boyd in the slot. They have T. Higgins that's shown he can be an outside receiver and a good one at that. Kyle Pitts is not the finishing piece of this offense, but a piece that gets them really, really close. And probably, I want to say, the best offensive threat on the Bengals already. Pitts is a really, really good player, and I think they might jump to take best player available at this spot at number 5. That puts the Eagles at number 6. I think they would consider QB if one of these 4 fell, but none of the 4 fell. So we have the Eagles at number 6, and we're going to take Jamar Chase here. Jamar Chase is a really, really solid receiver. I know a lot of guys have him at receiver 1 in the class. I personally have Jalen Waddle. As many of you know, I did an entire video on Jalen Waddle. I'll have more in-depth running back, receiver, tight end, all the way through up to safety. Ranking videos coming up in the near future as I finish off these tape studies with the All-22. But they're all really close. The top 3 are very, very good receivers. You really can't go wrong with any of them. And the Eagles get a big-time wide receiver 1, classic X-style receiver in Jamar Chase. That puts the Lions at number 7. They've got a lot of interesting options. It's not a great team, and they have a ton of picks in the future. We are going to go Jalen Waddle, though. Listen, I know that they signed Brashad Perriman. Listen, the only reason I have to go through this is Lion fans are going to tell me they signed Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams. They don't need a receiver. That's fine now. Both one-year deals. I know most of you guys are smarter than that, but both one-year deals. There's not much at receiver there at all. Quintez Cephas in there as well. Victor Bolden Jr. I mean, it's not a strong receiver group at all. I don't even know how I remembered his name. Jalen Waddle is immediately the biggest weapon on that team. Big time speed, great route runner with really good hands and a large catch radius. Can help make Jared Goff's life a lot easier for the goofball in Detroit. And then we have the Dolphins at number 8. They traded down from number 3. And what do they want to take here at number 8? Well, how about someone that can reunite with Tua, despite saying he prefers Mac Jones as a quarterback, but reunite with Tua, someone that can create separation. I know they signed Will Fuller. I understand that. But this would be a really good addition to their team. Will Fuller is a guy that can get deep. Devontae Smith is a guy that can create separation on, nearly every play. He can run a complex route trio, can pretty much run any route you ask him. He's arguably the best route runner in the class. He's got really solid hands, and this is a guy that can separate on the team better than anybody else. Will Fuller is a great deep threat. Preston Williams is an okay red zone threat. Devontae Parker is an okay chain mover. But Devontae Smith is a true separator and an upgrade on the offense as well. I mean, the Dolphins have done fairly well in free agency so far, but Devontae Smith would be a great piece and a great pickup. As we get to the Broncos at number 9, I think maybe a team that would have tried to trade up to number 3 or to number 4 for a quarterback, not able to get it done. So we're going to take a cornerback in Patrick Surtain. I know they went out and signed Ronald Darby. I think Surtain is still a really good pickup in that secondary. You could consider some other players here, some other positions even, but I think Patrick Surtain will be the guy for the Denver Broncos here. I think Caleb Farley certainly would be in consideration as well. As we get to the Cowboys at 10, and I think Caleb Farley isn't going to last too much longer. We are going Caleb Farley here at number 11 to the Dallas Cowboys. I know they were able to bring back, not Jordan Matthews, Michigan guy. Why am I blanking on his name? Jordan with a U. Is it Jordan Lewis? Yeah, it is Jordan Lewis. I don't know why I blanked on his last name for a second, but I know they brought back Jordan Lewis. I know that you have Trevon Diggs there, but cornerback is still a weak position. Their secondary is not strong really at all. They lost Chidobe Awuzie. Caleb Farley is a very good pickup for that team. I was surprised that they brought back Jordan Lewis, to be honest, but they just really don't have many corners under contract. I know they have Anthony Brown there as well, maybe for another year. But Farley is a future CB1 for this team and someone that they really should not pass on. As we get to the Giants at 11, and the Giants are heavily linked to Kenny Golladay right now, but as I record this, he is not signed. And even if the Giants do sign Kenny Golladay and a guy like Jalen Waddle's on the board or Devontae Smith, well, they might use a true separator like that. They might really like that pairing with Kenny Golladay, but all those guys are gone. So what do we do? Well, the offensive line is still incredibly weak. It's so bad. And if a guy like Rashawn Slater's on the board, I think the Giants would really heavily consider Rashawn Slater, especially with his added ability to go inside and play guard. Matt Pert could start at right tackle, or maybe even slide inside to guard as well. Slater could start at either tackle spot immediately. You have Andrew Thomas, who you hope is going to be the future of left tackle. You hope Will Hernandez is going to bounce back and play well at left guard. I don't know about Shane Lemieux. There isn't really an option there at center. But Rashawn Slater is just best player available at a position that you know Dave Gettleman is really going to want to draft. And it is a weak position for the Giants, especially after cutting Kevin Zeitler. Rashawn Slater, I think, would be a really nice pickup. The added versatility to play all these different line spots and also being such a technician and a guy that can start at tackle immediately as well, I think would just be too tempting for Dave Gettleman to pass on. As we get to the 49ers here, and I have them taking J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. I think these cornerbacks are going to go a lot higher than you'd expect because there are a lot of really good corners in this class. It's a depthy cornerback group, but based on all these teams that really could use corner, when you look at the Cowboys and the Broncos and the 49ers and the Vikings, even though they brought in Pat Pete, and the Patriots, depending on what happens with Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson, and the Cardinals and the Raiders, Washington football team, not so much. Maybe even the Bears now. I know they signed Desmond Trufant, who's bad, but you cut Kyle Fuller. The Colts could use CB. The Titans could use CB. The Jets desperately need corner. There's so many teams that need cornerback. I mean, the Browns are in the mix as well. The Saints are in the mix. The Packers are in the mix. The Bills are in the mix. So many teams need cornerback. I think cornerback's going to be a position where you see more than you'd expect get drafted in the first round. And that's why a guy like J.C. Horn's going at number 12 overall. As we get to the LA Chargers, and yes, Penei Sewell, he finally goes. His draft fall is stopped. I just think about these teams that could take offensive line, and outside of the Bengals, maybe at 5, you're probably not going to see these other teams go O-line. In the top 10, maybe the Cowboys. And then with the Giants, it's just maybe Penei Sewell isn't a culture fit there, as there are some questions. Maybe he won't even run, and maybe he won't even participate in his pro day. So there is that. I know a lot of teams are going to have Rashawn Slater as offensive tackle 1, but Penei Sewell does end up going to an offensive line needy team that can play him right away at tackle or guard, and I think the Chargers are happy about that, keeping him somewhat local on the West Coast. As we get to the Vikings at 14, and this is actually going to be another trade down spot. We're going to go ahead and work a trade out where we have the Vikings moving down from 14 with another NFC team, looking up for a quarterback, trying to jump the Patriots, and that team is going to be Washington Football Team. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what the details of this trade might be. It'll absolutely be a pick swap in the first round, and then probably plus more. I think Washington Football Team would be willing to give up a third that they traded for. You might even see a pick swap. I know the Vikings have a ton of fourth-round picks. Maybe a fourth is thrown in, and then like another future 3 or something like that from Washington Football Team. And Washington will end up moving up for a QB, and that quarterback is going to be Mac Jones. I would not be surprised to see him go inside the top 15. All these teams need quarterback, and Washington Football Team has shown that they are willing to get a lot better, and they made a lot of big moves. Bringing in Curtis Samuel is massive for the offense. bringing in William Jackson was massive for the defense. Washington football team has been very, very active. I know they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that's a bridge quarterback, and Mac Jones could take over and be a starter in year one for Washington football team. As we get to the Patriots at 15, I think this is a case of just best player available, and that might be Kwity Paye there at 15. Really solid addition to the defensive line. I think a guy that you can play at different defensive line spots, whether that means coming off the edge or sliding inside in certain rush packages. Kwity Paye would be a very good addition to a Patriots team. Now, they might go corner here, depending on what happens with J.C. Jackson. A guy like Greg Newsome, Eric Stokes could make a lot of sense. Maybe even reach down the board for somebody a little bit. But Kwity Paye, I think, is probably too good to pass up at that spot for the Patriots. And kind of the same deal for the Cardinals at 16. They need corner so badly, and a guy like Greg Newsome being available, really, really solid cornerback. And the Cardinals don't really have much there right now. I do like Byron Murphy. Would be nice to see him take a big step in his third year. But Greg Newsome is a really, really solid player in his own right. I think someone that would look to start at cornerback almost immediately. And it is a really, really bad group of cornerbacks right now for the Arizona Cardinals. Greg Newsome is just a wonderful addition to that secondary. For another team that's looking to compete right now, it's a really tough NFC West, but Greg Newsome is really good. And they just don't have much of cornerback right now. As we get to the Raiders, they've had a dumpster fire of an offseason. Their offensive line is incredibly weak right now. You no longer have Trent Brown. You no longer have Gabe Jackson. You no longer have Rodney Hudson. Those are three starters on the right side of the line that are gone. I know you're going to tell me Denzel Good played a lot last year. Trent Brown was weird with injuries and work ethic and all that going on, and he's back in New England now. So for the Raiders, I think taking offensive line would be extremely tempting at this point. I really do. I think it would be extremely tempting because you have guys like Christian Darrisaw, Sam Cosmi, Tevin Jenkins all available. Elijah Vera Tucker still available. However, I also think the value is too much for them to pass up on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. There just aren't many players like him that come along in the draft where you have the size to play linebacker, the athleticism and the coverage ability to play safety, and to be an overhang defender that can be their Isaiah Simmons type player, or at least what the Cardinals hope Isaiah Simmons can turn into. JOK is a really, really good player, and I think just a perfect scheme fit for that Raiders defense that relies so heavily on guys that can cover, like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can. I think it's just a match made in heaven, and they'll look to go offensive line in rounds 2 and 3, and their defense is so bad as it is. I think for the Raiders, they're just looking to take best player available, and that in that case, for me, is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. As we get to the Dolphins, and as I'm sure you've noticed, I have another guy dropping. Micah Parsons, of course, has big-time concerns with some of the allegations for stuff that he did or maybe didn't do at Penn State, and I think that could impact where he goes in the draft. We could even be looking late round 1 for a guy like Micah Parsons at probably the tail end of his fall. He's a really high upside player that is a freak athlete that, in my opinion, right now just isn't this unreal linebacker the way a lot of people are hyping him up to be. He just gets redirected too easily. I think the instincts at linebacker are not really a strength of his. I don't think he can be an every down rush linebacker either. I don't think he has the ability to get after the quarterback like that. So he might be kind of the ultimate tweener. I hope he's not an Aaron Curry type player. But and there are also reports that he doesn't really even care about football that much. So I don't know. It's a weird spot. I know the culture fit with Flores in Miami might not suit a guy like Micah Parsons going at this spot, but I think also for the Dolphins, they might just bank on the high upside and say, we're going to take him and we're going to reform him. He's going to fit in our locker room. We're going to make it fit. So we'll have to see how that goes. But Micah Parsons to the Dolphins at 18. And we get to the Vikings at 19. And this is another match made in heaven. You got Elijah Vera Tucker sticking there, just sticking out at 25 on the Draft Network big board. I think he's probably a lot better than that. He is a really, really solid interior offensive lineman. And for the Vikings who need interior offensive line, and even his flexibility to slide outside and play tackle, maybe as he's shown at USC, this is a match made in heaven. How do you trade down from 14 and still get the player that you probably would have drafted at 14 anyway? They get him at 19. I think it's a great trade all around for the Minnesota Vikings. and a great pick for them. As we get to the Bears at 20, and I'm going with Tevin Jenkins, just a mean offensive lineman that fits the power run better there in Chicago. We know they don't have much of a quarterback situation with Andy Dalton right now, who's they're saying is going to be their starter. Well, you got to improve your offensive line for him, and he's a guy that fits in really, really well, can start at right tackle immediately. I think it's just another match made in heaven for the Chicago Bears, who would probably also consider Christian Darrisaw maybe the best receiver available as well, but they re-signed or franchise tagged Allen Robinson, so he's back for 1 year. But I think this probably should be offensive line for sure. And we get the Colts at 21. I think cornerback definitely would be in play as well. But with the big retirement of Anthony Costanzo, you have a glaring hole at offensive tackle. Why not take one of the most athletic offensive linemen in the class who can go in and start at left tackle immediately? He was a big-time starter at Texas for his entire career. And why not go in there and immediately fill that hole and start at left tackle? I think that works out really well for the Colts. As we get to the Titans at 22, and I really want to go edge here, or interior defensive line, but then they brought in Bud Dupree, and I'm saying maybe they don't really need to do that quite as much. They released Adoree Jackson. I go, okay, this has to be a cornerback. It already is not a very talented cornerback group for the Titans as it is. Release Malcolm Butler, who's bad. Eric Stokes is sitting on the board. A prospect I already liked, and then he went out there and ran like 4.25, 4.29, and 4.25 again maybe at his pro day. And I go, okay, Eric Stokes can fly. I already knew that from the tape. Doesn't play quite as fast as that, but is a really twitchy, instinctive corner. I love Eric Stokes personally, and I think he's a big-time fit for the Titans that really need a cornerback. And I think the Jets would be furious that Eric Stokes just went at 22. I think maybe they'd look to trade up with a team like the Colts to jump the Titans for a corner because those offensive linemen are going to be there available anyway. And the Jets are so weak at cornerback. Like, you're not even aware how weak it is when you have Bless Austin starting at cornerback and Brian Poole is your best corner and he's a free agent, and Bryce Hall might be your other starting cornerback in 2021. It's not good. And I think they're going to be forced to reach down the board for a corner, and we're going with the high upside athleticism of Tyson Campbell. I know there's some guys that are really high on him. Looked at what Lance Zierlein put out with his corner rankings and had Tyson Campbell in there at CB like 3 or CB4. And I go, that's pretty interesting. I don't necessarily agree on that. I think he's a big-time athlete that maybe he's lacking a little bit, at least in zone coverage. Man coverage isn't terrible. But Tyson Campbell is the pick here for the Jets that just really need cornerback help more than anything. And unfortunately for the Jets, he's probably the best corner on their roster immediately. As we get to the Steelers at 24, for me here, the Steelers absolutely need to improve that offensive line. Losing Alejandro Villanueva is huge. Losing Maurkice Pouncey is huge. You need offensive line help badly. You did bring back Boo Schuster. Shout out Antonio Brown. But you really need offensive line, and Christian Darrisaw is just sticking out there at 24. I think Jalen Mayfield also should be in play. Really good scheme fit, but he's been more experienced at right tackle. Christian Darrisaw is more experienced now at left tackle, and they're trying to fill that Villanueva spot. So Darrisaw is my guy there at 24 for the Steelers. As we get to the Jaguars at 25, we're going IDL here. We're going Christian Barmore. The Jags are a team that is also apparently committed to winning. The tank is over. Like, they still might not be a great team in 2021, but they've got some high upside. I think they're going to surprise some guys. They might not win more than like 6 games, right? And maybe even 7 with the new schedule with one more game. But the Jaguars got a bunch of really good additions to their team, and they're trying to do something. They've got a solid offensive line. They brought in Marvin Jones. I already like DJ Chark. I like Laviska Shenault. If Tyler Eifert can have a bounce-back year, that's huge. You already know they're going to bring in Trevor Lawrence. At least we have that here. At running back, you bring in Carlos Hyde to take more snaps with James Robinson, who was good last year. And then on defense, you do have some holes. Interior defensive line being a big one. Christian Barmore, who played so great the second half of the year at Alabama, especially into the college football playoff. Barmore has incredibly high upside, pass rush upside as well. He's a freak athlete for his size. He's like 6'5", 300, and can get after the quarterback. It's exactly what the Jacksonville Jaguars need on the interior of that defensive line. They already have a great nose tackle in there they brought in from Ohio State in the 3rd round last year. this is a big-time move to pair him with a big-time potential pass rusher. Josh Allen already on that line. I think the Jaguars have gotten a lot better, brought in Shaquille Griffin as well. CJ Henderson could take another step up in his second year. I like what the Jaguars have done. I think they're still weak at safety, but it's something they can address in round 2. You pick pretty high in round 2. So Christian Barmore for me, maybe the best interior defensive lineman in the class. Talk about Levi Onwuzurike as well. But Barmore is a great addition to this Jags team that, again, I think really could surprise people in 2021. The only big issue is you got a rookie quarterback. Even though it might be the best rookie quarterback we've seen in a minute in Trevor Lawrence, it's still a rookie quarterback. You still got to adjust to the NFL. New head coach as well. Coaching is the biggest thing in the NFL. Urban Meyer, never been an NFL coach. We don't know how his style of coaching is going to translate to the next level. So that's a big question mark with the Jaguars, but they have all the draft picks. They have all the talent that they're adding now. And if they have a good draft, the Jaguars could be in business in a couple of years. They really could be. Browns at 26. This is a tough call for me. It really is. They need edge pretty badly. I know they brought in Takk McKinley on a one-year deal. I don't care about that. I think they just signed Malik Jackson as well. Linebacker's not a super strong position for them. But they did sign in Anthony Walker from the Colts, who I like quite a bit. But I think a good fit for them, when I'm looking at these edge rushers, no one really particularly standing out. I do like Jalen Phillips, but for a guy that's already retired from football once, I don't know if you take a chance on him in the first round. If you're the Browns at 26, I think you take a player with unreal scheme versatility and you play him as strong side linebacker with potential to rush the quarterback in behind Takk McKinley as well. I think he's a guy that would be so great on different stunts and scrapes and blitzes as a linebacker. We love what Zaven Collins brings to the table. And for the Browns, this just might be best player available, and you can play him in a number of different spots and probably find success in any of those spots. As we get to the Ravens at 27. And long story short on this one, the Ravens just need edge. Edge is such a huge hole for them. Azeez Ojulari sticking out. We're just going to plug and play him. The Ravens are losing Yannick Ngakoue. In fact, they've already lost him. They're losing Matthew Judon. Azeez Ojulari is a big-time upgrade because you don't have much on the edge right there, right now. Like Tyus Bowser's maybe your best edge guy. It's not good. Saints at 28. Another team that really needs cornerback, and I totally understand that, but safety is also not a strong position for them. And Trayvon Merrick's sticking there probably as the best safety in the draft. Safety is not good. Malcolm Jenkins is not good. I love Marcus Williams, but he's playing on the franchise tag. So getting a safety, maybe taking best player available when you don't love any of the cornerbacks there, and that's just an opinion with Trayvon Merrick still on the board, because with the next pick, I am going to go cornerback for the Packers. And I wanted to find a player that I thought would really fit what the Packers like to do. And, I mean, Jair Alexander is so good in zone coverage. He's good in man, too, don't get me wrong, but he's so good in zone coverage. I wanted to get a guy with some size at the position. I know the Packers have done this before with Kelvin King. They love their size at cornerback. But a guy that could actually cover as well. Someone with experience in zone coverage who's real good. And that's Kelvin Joseph. Size, when we look at him, he's like 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", and is adept in zone coverage. I think it's just a really, really good fit for the Green Bay Packers as we get to the Buffalo Bills at 30. And we're going to go ahead and go with Gregory Rousseau here. The Bills need edge. I think they've done a great job to retain some of that talent that we thought were going to escape the free agency. Matt Milano, John Feliciano, Darrell Williams at linebacker, guard, and tackle respectively. But they don't really have a ton on the edge. And for a guy like Rousseau, that's a developmental player with super high upside due to his length and athleticism and inexperience at the position, if he can get coached up and get better and continue to get better, like, he's going to play, and he's going to play well. So the Bills get a solid player here at 30. As we get to the Chiefs at 31, we know offensive line's a big need for them, but we saw them sign Joe Thuney. We saw them sign Kyle Long. We know that Laurent Duvernay-Tardif is probably coming back. So guard maybe isn't an issue. Maybe if you move Thuney over to tackle maybe not so much of an issue, but it's still a bit of a question mark. I'd like to go receiver for them as well. But offensive tackle is just too big of a need. in my opinion. There are some good ones available. I'm going to go Liam Eichenberg. I think Jalen Mayfield has starting right tackle potential, but I just want someone who's a little bit better as a pass protector. And for me, that is Liam Eichenberg. He gets a slight edge over Jalen Mayfield, who's a great run defender, or not run defender, great run blocker. Excuse me. I don't know what I'm talking about because I misspoke. Classic. But we get to the Tampa Bay Bucks at 32, and this is just an easy pick, and it isn't one player. It's best player available. The Bucks won the Super Bowl, brought back Shaq Barrett on a big-time extension. They franchise tag Chris Godwin. They could go interior defensive line here, like Levi Onwuzurike is available, but I think it's just best player available, and Kadarius Toney sticking out. Rashad Bateman's an option. That's a very easy Chris Godwin replacement, and you can develop Rashad Bateman this year, but they might think they have something with Tyler Johnson as he gets more playing time in year 2. So what do we do here if we are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Do we want to double down and get better on the offensive line? Because we could do that. Maybe even play Jalen Mayfield at offensive guard. Maybe take an offensive guard and Trent Smith. This really is just best player available for the Bucks. You could sell me on Kadarius Toney or Rashad Bateman. You could sell me on Levi Onwuzurike. You could sell me on Trent Smith or Trent Smith. Why am I calling him that? Trey Smith or Jalen Mayfield. You could still take edge. You really could, because even though you brought back Shaq Barrett, JPP's not getting any younger. Edge is still a need. It's really just best player available. You can complete this mock in your head any way how you'd like. I'm going to go with Levi Onwuzurike. We're going 2 D tackles in the first round there. And that is my updated mock draft with trades. 32 picks. My next mock draft will have multiple rounds. So if you want round 2, round 3, make sure to like the video. That should be fun. It's going to be interesting to see where Kenny Golladay and some other guys sign. That could change the mock draft a little bit, but that's it for me. I know we have a bunch of crazy drops and some big-time trades in there as well. We have, 3 or 4 trades? Like, not too crazy, but we have some big-time drops based on injury plus potential character concerns, and then we have some risers based on positional need for some of these teams. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already for more draft content for the 2021 NFL Draft and beyond, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.
It's insane, I hit it at the park, bend bones. See me high step to the end zone. My life like a game, Nintendo. Playing with the best, let them know. Get off the track, the train's coming through. Yeah, promise you get in my way, then you best believe I'ma just run over you. Yeah, yeah. Papa turn taking it back to the house. Defensive joke, I'm laughing so loud. Speed burst good.